Hello everyone, hope that you all are doing good. So in today's video we'll cover a much awaited topic, that is JWT Authentication and Authorization. I'll explain what is JWT and how we will use it, but before that I'll also cover topics as per subscribers demand, but you people are not sharing videos among your contacts. I would request you that if you people find my videos informative, do like, share among your contacts and comment on the videos. I'll try my level best to give you replies on your comments. And if new to the channel, please do hit the subscribe button and press the bell icon. Now let's first understand what is JWT and why we require JWT at the first place, right? So for that I would first explain you that what was the conventional way of doing authentication and authorization of our applications and how JWT changes that, right? So now let me take you to a graph that explains that how the conventional way used to work. So we have a login screen, right? So we have a login screen wherein we have to input our hard-coded credentials, right? Our username and password, right? So when we input our username and password, then we are redirected to a particular API. Like user lands on user has an application and the user wants to go on a API that is slash API1, right? So when there is authentication and authorization applied on your application, then all URLs will be authenticated, right? So whenever you will hit any API, you will have to put hard-coded username and password, right? So when the user wants to go on slash API1, he would have to enter his username and password. Then only he will be authorized to go to that API, right? And now again, if the user wants to hit API2, that is slash API2, then also again he has to input his username and password, and then he would be allowed to go to that API, right? So this was a problem, right? Whenever we are accessing any API, we have to input hard-coded username and password every time, right? So this was the conventional way, right? This is how the conventional way works. Another way would be that you remove the authentication or authorization from your application, that is the Spring security, and your application would be free, right? You don't have to input any credentials, you can directly go to that API. But then your application security is being breached, right? So you are not using Spring security at that moment. So now how JWT changes this? So first of all, what is JWT? So JWT is JSON Web Token, right? So it is kind of a tokenization of your credentials. So let me take you to the another flow graph that explains that after JWT token is being introduced, how the application flow changes. So you would have an API wherein like you want to go to an API that is slash API1, or you want to go to an API that is slash API2, right? The conventional way was that you have to input username and password every time. You should have your hard-coded username and password available, and then you can hit the particular APIs. But now when the JWT token is being introduced, there could be an API that could generate a token, that could generate a string, you can say, right? A string, but that string has a literal meaning that explain you that what meaning does that string have. If we take it in a very layman language, so there would be an API that is for, in this case it is slash gen token, that will generate a JWT token and will give back. So when the client side will be hitting that particular API that is slash gen token, it will return a token to it, right? And token will have some kind of an expiry date or some kind of an expiry time, right? Till that time only you can use that token. And now when the token is there with you, you can append that token in any API you are calling. Like you are calling slash API1 or you are calling slash API2, you can append that JWT token. You don't need any hard-coded credentials, right? So you don't need any hard-coded when your JWT token is being generated. Now the JWT token is generated. What is actually JWT token? So now let me take you to the official site of JWT, that is jwt.io. So it explains very beautifully that how your token is being generated. So you can play around with it, right? On the screen you can play around with it, that how your tokens could be generated. So now you can see that there is an example of a token right here. So the token is there is a color of, like, red color is there is a purple color, there is another color here, right? So these colors are actually explaining that what all things have been appended in your token, right? So what all things have been appended in your token, these colors explain you, right? So now the red part shows that it appends the part of header, right? So header contains that what algorithm is being used to protect your application. So the algorithm here is HS256. So here the header part explains that HS256 is the algorithm that is being used, and the type that we are using is the JWT, right? And then the purple color tells you that the data that we are flowing in, right? The data that I'll be putting in, that data will be described by this color, right? So the data is the payload, the JSON payload that we are sending for a maybe you are saving a user, which we will be doing in this application. So I'll be saving a user, so that user payload like name, email ID, password, everything comes under payload data. So this is the second thing that is appended into your JWT token. Now the third thing is the verification signature, right? So verification signature is actually telling you that how you are encoding your header, how you are encoding your payload, and then there is an append of a secret. Secret is nothing. Secret could be a simple string, secret could be 123, secret could be anything, any secure thing that you think that can append into your string and make it a complex string, right? So you can put in anything here, right? Anything you put here would be reflected here. If I remove this and I put random strings, so you can see that this value is getting changed, right? So these three combined together make a JWT token, JSON Web Token. So it is a kind of a very secure token that actually protects your application very well, right? Rather than using the conventional way of logging again and again to use any API, right? So now I've explained that what is JWT token and why are we using JWT token and why are we moving away from the conventional way of security, right? So now let's go to the application. We'll be implementing an example wherein I'll be using a REST controller. I won't be using a login screen or anything. We'll be using a pure REST controller wherein I'll be saving a user, right? And then we have an API to generate the JWT token. Then we would have an API that would be secured, where you have to append the token and then only that call would work. So now let's discuss the code, that how the code flow would work and what all things you require in your code, right? So I have made the different packages and different classes. So I'll explain the code in a flow manner, right? How the request would come to you and how you will be actually processing that request, right? So what all things would come in between. So we'll start with our main class. So this is my main class, that is JWT implementation application. It just contains a main method, right? And here in this application, we'll be using Postgres database to save our user data. So this is my main class. So we have our some of the models, that is our user class, right? So I have a user class. I have an ID, username, password, email, and their getter setters, right? I have a table with the name of user, right? And let me now, then there is a user DTO. I'm using this DTO to actually fetch data from the client side or from the REST point, right? From the postman that we'll be hitting. Then we have a repository, that is a user repository, where we're having a method of find user by username, right? We are finding the user by the username, right, method. and then I have my default user service, which extends the user detail service. This is the Spring framework security user detail service that is being provided. So when I extend this, so in its implementation, I have to have the overridden method of load user by username, wherein we are finding a user using find user by username, and then we are returning that user, right? So the constructor return is the user dot username and the password, right? And this empty empty array list is the list that contains your roles, right? So I am not having any roles right now in this application, but this parameter contains the list of roles that your user might be having, right? So that would be returned here. So right now I'm sending an empty list here, right? So this is my service class, right? So we have covered model class, we have covered repository, we have covered the service class. Now the main starting point of everything is the Spring security config, right? We'll come back to the REST controller again when I'll be explaining each and every call, but let's directly jump to the Spring security config, right, class. So we have a Spring security config class wherein we have the @configuration and @enable web security marked for this class, right? So what you can see here is one thing that is a change here is that we are not using the deprecated web security adapter, right? So this is a fresh new code that you can use before Spring 3.0. So here we have a bean of bcrypt password encoder that we are using to encode the password into the database, right? Any user which is inputting his username and password for registration the password would be encoded and then would be saved into the database, right? So that's why we have made a bean of bcrypt password, right? Then we have the DAO authentication provider, right? So these are the basic methods that we require to use the Spring security, right? Then we have our authentication manager bean, right? So we need a bean of authentication manager that will come to when we'll be using it, right? Then the most important method is of filter chain, right? Security filter chain method, which all calls would be authenticated by Spring security, which all calls would not be authenticated by Spring security, right? So we have a call like I have made the CSRF and chorus filter disabled, right? And then we have the /registration and /gen token API left out from the authentication process, right? So if you hit /registration or /token API, gen token API, then you don't have to input your credentials, right? You don't have to authenticate those requests, because /registration here in this application would be used to save the user into your database. If you don't have a user in your database, then there is no use of an application, right? So that's why I've left the /registration API away from the authentication. And then there is /gen token API. So a API that generates a JWT token on the basis of the credentials that are being provided by the user, right? The user which is trying to log in. So if that API is being authenticated, then again there is no use of using JWT token, as that JWT token API is also using the hard-coded credentials, right? So that API is also being left away from the authentication, right? And the other things are that the API with these markings should be permitted, and any other request other than these would be authenticated, right? And then we have the session management and session creation policy. So we have made a stateless session here. Then one thing that you will see that is an add-on here is the http.add filter before, right? So add filter before, what it tells you is that whenever there is a request for an authentication, right? So that authentication, like if I say that other than /registration and /gen token, if any other API is trying to hit my application, it will read your token and it will check that okay, the token that was generated, the credentials that your token contains, the time that your token contains is exactly the same that was generated. And if that was the case, that it is exactly that it was generated, then the authentication of the process is done and you can access that API, right? So that's why we have added a filter before that. Before your request could be served, a filter would be in between it, right? We'll go ahead that how the process works, right? So we have input here in the add filter method, we have the input of JWT filter, right? We have a class called as JWT filter in our program, and then we have done the http.build. So this was a very basic kind of a Spring security class that we have written, right? So if I explain you the process again, that any request coming with /registration/gen token would be permitted. They don't require any kind of credentials. That any other request other than the /registration or /gen token would be authenticated. And in the authentication process, we need to go to the filtration of the JWT token, right? So in that particular call that you are making, other than /registration and /gen token, in that your JWT token would be passed, right? So we have to find the credentials from your JWT token, and then have to match those credentials with the database user. And if that matches, then only the access to that particular user would be given, right? So now if I go on the process, how the application would work, then first let me go on how you would be generating the JWT token, right? So there is a class called as JWT token validator, right? So here what we are doing is, let's start with the process of generation, right? So there would be a call to generate a token. Whenever there is a call to /gen token API, it will call the generate token method. It's an empty map of claims, right? And then it is calling a create token method, right? So create token method is creating a token that I explained you on jwt.io, right? So in this way we'll be creating a token here, right? So how we are generating a token, and we have used JWTS class and called the builder method, right? We are setting all the claims that are being passed to us, right? Claims means that anything, right? Anything that is like algorithm, the type, the payload and everything, right? And then we have the subject. So subject is the username, right? So the username would be passed, and then your claims would be passed. So if you can check here, right? So the username would be passed and the claims would be passed, right? So claims are everything that other than the username that has been present, right? Other than the payload username that has been present. So we have the claims, then we have the username of the user, and then we have the set issue at, right? So set issue at is the time at which we are setting this particular JWT token, right? The time at which this JWT token process starts and it would get generated, right? And then we have the expiration date, right? So I have kept the expiration date just of 5 minutes, right? So in 5 minutes the JWT token would get expired, right? And then we have the sign with, right? So sign with tells us that what algorithm is being used here, right? So this part, right? This part is the sign with. So this part is the sign with that we are defining. So we have the algorithm as HS256 that we have defined here, right? And then we have the secret. The secret could be any simple string that you can pass. I have passed the channel name, that is Code with Raman, as a secret, right? And then we have generated the token, right? So we are generating the token in this manner. Let me now go to the controller part to explain you. This is a very simple call, that is a /registration call that we'll be having a DTO kind of, right? A username, email and password would be passed, and we'll simply save the user into the database, right? So the user would get saved here. And this is not a authenticated call, authenticated API. So it doesn't require any kind of JWT token or your credentials, right? Then there is another API called as gen token, right? So gen token, what it is doing is, as I told, that it is a API to generate the JWT token, right? So what we are performing here is that, okay, we'll get in the user DTO, we have the username, email and password. In the user DTO, we have the username, password and email, right? When a user says that, okay, I want to generate a JWT token, he needs to pass the username and password to the request, right? To the gen token request. So the username and password would be provided to us. And then what we are doing is we are using authentication manager. As I told that we have made an authentication manager bean in our Spring Security file. So this is where we are using it. So we are using authentication manager and we are authenticating. So what authenticate method would do is that it will take your username and password and it will authenticate that, okay, the username and password that you have passed from the API is actual username and password that which you are registered with in the database. And if that is the case, then only proceed further, right? I don't want that any user putting his password, any username is putting his username and password and want to generate a token. Why would we require that way, right? We want that only users that are being registered with this application can generate a token and then can proceed further with any other request, right? So we have the authenticate method, which is authenticating our username and password, right? So it is authenticating our username and password that, okay, this particular user is present in the database. If there is a exception that this user is not present in the database, then we are giving this exception invalid username or password, right? And then what we are calling is, we are calling the generate token method that I explained you, right? So when the token is being generated, now, as I told you that slash registration and slash gen token are away from the authentication part. But then you can see that there is another API called as slash welcome. So slash welcome would be an authenticated API, right? So for calling slash welcome without a token, it would say that the request is being forbidden, right? So request would not be allowed because you won't be passing your token into the request. That's why the request won't be allowed, right? So for generate welcome API, we would have to have a token from this API, and then that token would be passed as an input to this API, and then we'll get the output of welcome. Now when this token is being passed into that API, how the token would get verified, right? So for that, again, I'll take you to the Spring Security class, and what it explains is that for verifying, add a filter, right? So the filtration process works and it actually checks that, okay, this token that the user is providing is containing the actual credentials that we have passed, that the user is present in the database or not, right? And the time and expiration time and everything is being checked that, okay, the token is not expired, right? So let me now take you to the JWT filter class. So what we are doing here is we are extending it with once per request filter, right? So every request comes onto the system, it checks that, okay, the token, the bearer token that is being passed by the user to this API is correct or not, right? So how we are checking that token? We are actually finding out the authorization part, right? So authorization part contains our bearer token, right? So we will find the authorization header, then we'll check that, okay, authorization header is not null, and it starts with bearer, that is 7 characters, right? So 6 is the bearer and one is the space, right? So now if I say that, okay, authorization header, remove the first 7 string and then return the token, right? So it says the substring is been removed and the token has been returned, right? Now what we are saying that, okay, find the username. Is the username present or not? So what we are saying that, okay, go to the generator, JWT generator, and extract the username from this particular string, that is the token, right? So if we go into this method, it says that, okay, the token is being passed. It says extract claims and extract token, right? So we have the claims and gets, and then we have the tokens here. So we'll go to the extract claims. So extract claims contains our token and the claims rollover. Then we have to find all the claims from the token, that what all claims have been passed. So claims are actually the time, the expiration time, the set time that on which the token is being generated, right? So those are the claims, right? So it goes into the extract claim method, right? So it goes in extract all claims, right? So it says that okay, set sign key secret and then parse claim JWS token dot get body, right? To extract the tokens from the string that has been passed to us as a JWT token, right? And then again we are checking here that okay, the token is not expired, right? So you can see that we have made a call to is the token expired or not, right? So how we are doing is that we are validating it, right? So when we validate the token, so the validation process works right here. So it extracts the username. So extracting of the username is done on the same method, right? So we are extracting the username and the claims and everything. And then what we are doing is we are checking that okay, the username is equal to the user details dot username, right? So user details dot username would be found from the particular database user, right? So the username would be matched, okay, this username is present in the database or not. And then we'll also check that okay, the token is expired or not. So how we are checking the token is expired or not? So we'll get the token and we'll extract the expiration, right? So expiration would be extract from the token, and then we'll be checking that okay, the if we go into the get expiration method, so it will check that okay, the particular date time is valid or not, the time has not been passed, right? So this is how we'll be validating the token, right? So I'll explain the process when we'll be running the application again, right? So whenever the /welcome API would be called, we'll be embedding the token into that request, and that token would get validated from our filters, and then only we'll be allowed to go to the welcome page, right? So this is the code part that we have done, right? And I'm using the Postgres database, so I have some properties to configure Postgres database here, right? So I'll make the schema here first. Let me go and let me make a schema. Now as I have made the database, right? So my database is made. Now let's go and run the application, right? Let me go to the main class of this application and let me run this application, right? Run as Spring Boot app, right? So our server is up now, right? So now let me go to the Postman. So now what we'll do is we'll directly hit this particular API, that is /welcome, right? We don't have any user in the database right now. We haven't hit the gen token API. So we'll directly hit the /welcome API. What output it gives, let us check, right? So let me hit the /welcome API. So what it tells us is 403 forbidden. The request was legal request, but the server is refusing to respond it. So let me now first go on the registration call, right? So first what we'll do is we'll register a user. And let me register a user with the username Raman, password as 123456, and the email as ramanpopli19@gmail.com. So let me send this. So okay, my user is being saved, right? So user is being saved successfully. Let us go in the database and let us also check our table. Let me run this query and let us see that what is the output of this, as we have already registered one user. So here you can see that a user is being registered with the email ID as this and the username as this, and the password is being encoded by BC Crypt password encoder, right? So our one user is being registered, right? So if I go to the gen token API, right? So as told while we were explaining the code, that okay, the gen token API would take the username and password of the user, right? It needs to authenticate that okay, this user is present in the database, and then only it will generate a token. It's no value when there is no user there, and we are giving an API where you can generate a token in for fun, right? So you can generate a token without the username and password if that particular authentication code is not there, right? So let me go to the body, and I have the username as Raman and the password as 123456. Now you can see that I am passing a normal password that I have passed. It is internally checking by decrypting and encrypting process that okay, this user is passing the exact password, right? So now let me go and hit this gen token API. So this gen token API would go and hit the, you can see that in the console you might have seen that okay, a call went, which was checking that okay, this particular user is present or not with that particular user and username. So that call came from this authentication manager dot authenticate, right? And then the call would be going to generate token, right? And the token would get generated. So now let me go and check that the token is being generated. Okay, so the token is being generated. Now let me copy this token and let me go to the decryptor, right? So let me remove this and let me put this. Okay, now you can see that the algorithm that has been used is the HS256, right? And then the subject is Raman, that is my username. Then there is an expiration time, right? Expiration time, you can see that the creation time is of 21048 and the expiration is of 210948, right? So it's of 5 minutes. And then we have the verify signature wherein we are encoding in this, and then this is my secret that is being passed. So that secret is also encoded, right? So you know that it was code with Raman, but the secret is also encoded here. So this is how your token is being generated. Now let's go and hit the, by using this particular token, let's hit the welcome call, right? Let me go on the welcome call and we'll go to the authorization part, and we have to select here the bearer token, right? So we need to select the bearer token here, and we have to pass this particular string here, right? If I pass this particular string here, and I don't need the body part, so we don't need the, I can say none, and we can say get, right? So if I say get, so it will return me welcome, the request has been successful, right? So how that worked, it went, it checked in the authorization part. From the headers, it fetched the authorization part, right? As the code explains, from the filter application, right? So from the authorization part, it fetched the from the headers, it fetched the authorization part, right? From that authorization header, we are working on that okay, this string contains a username, contains the expiry time, that is not expired, the time is not over, and then the generation time of the token is exactly the same that we generated for. Username and password of the user are exactly what are present in the database, and for whom this token is being generated for, right? So we generated a token, right? So now let me hit again this request. The token might have expired. Yes, you can see that 403 forbidden request is there. So the token has expired in 5 minutes, right? So if I go on gen token again, and if I say that generate a token again for these particular user and password, so it will generate another token, right? So let me copy this and let me go again in the welcome request. I'll go in the authorization part and let me replace this token with this particular token. So now the request might be 200. Yes, the request is 200. Now the welcome has been returned. So this is how you can use the JWT authentication and authorization other than the conventional way of passing your hard-coded username and password in each and every request, right? So this is how you can use JWT in your applications. This was a very basic kind of an application which would tell you that what is JWT, how to use JWT in your APIs, and how it is protecting your application other than passing the hard-coded username and password, right? So there was there were many comments that were coming that to cover the JWT token API, how to use the JWT in your Spring Boot application. So this is the application you can use, you can take reference from, right? I'll cover JWT in a full length project, which will be a UI based project. Right now the project is a REST controller, right? So I'll cover that, a UI based project. In that also I'll input the JWT token APIs, right? So this was it from this video. Hope that you people like, share, comment on the video, and if new to the channel, please subscribe and press the bell icon. Hope to see you in the next video. Till then, happy learning.